Welcome to Midnight Murmurs, where enchanting tales come alive. Join us tonight as we delve into the captivating world of the Crimson Blossom Rebellion. Experience a thrilling journey filled with mystery, betrayal, and a quest for justice. Like, subscribe, and let the whispers of Midnight Murmurs guide you to a world of peaceful slumber. Chapter 1: Whispers of Revolution. The midday sun threw deep shadows over the busy streets of Edo as Haruka Nakamura threaded her way through the hordes of people. The air was heavy with expectancy, murmurs of a revolt spreading like wildfire over the city. Haruka, a teenage samurai in service to the governing shogunate, could feel the tension crackling in the air, a storm forming on the horizon. Her movements hastened as she made her way to the inner halls of the shogunate's palace. Haruka's pulse hammered in her chest as she approached the entrance guarded by stoic samurai, their swords shining in the sunshine. She was allowed a meeting with Lord Hiroshi, the shogun's valued advisor, noted for his sharp mind and unshakable allegiance. The hall was hung with exquisite tapestries representing images of wars won and lost, a monument to the shogunate's supremacy. Lord Hiroshi sat behind a low table, his face etched with anxiety. His attention darted to Haruka as she arrived, a combination of intrigue and exhaustion in his eyes. "Haruka," he continued, his voice low and measured. "Sit." Haruka bowed properly and took a seat opposite Lord Hiroshi. She could feel the weight of duty falling on her shoulders as she anticipated his remarks. "There are rumors, my darling," Lord Hiroshi started, his tone solemn. "Rumors of an insurrection led by a person known as the Crimson Blossom. Whispers suggest that this leader possesses a charm that can influence the hearts of even the most devoted samurai." Haruka's eyes expanded significantly, her mind racing. The name had entered her ears, but until now, she had ignored it as mere hearsay. Now, faced with Lord Hiroshi's severe demeanor, she recognized the enormity of the issue. "I have invited you here, Haruka, because I trust in your commitment and unflinching allegiance to the shogunate," Lord Hiroshi said. "I need you to investigate these reports, establish the truth, and put an end to this revolt before it engulfs our kingdom in turmoil." Haruka nodded, her resolve blazing in her eyes. She knew this duty would not be simple, but she had promised her life to safeguard the shogunate, to preserve peace and stability for the people. When she stepped out into the city once more, Haruka's senses heightened. She listened to talks in tea places, searched for the secret corners where rebels may assemble, and watched the subtle changes in the daily lives of the population. The murmurs got louder, the stories more detailed, and she began to piece together the puzzle of the Crimson Blossom insurrection. Days stretched into nights as Haruka meticulously gathered information, her path intertwining with that of unscrupulous informants, disillusioned samurai, and even plain peasants who wished for a change. With each encounter, her comprehension increased, and her emotions fluctuated between allegiance to the shogunate and the yearning for justice. Haruka's trek through the maze of intrigue and deception was not without its risks. She narrowly dodged an ambush staged by rebel supporters and battled in fierce duels to safeguard her identity. Yet with each close call, her resolve simply became stronger. The city became her body, its streets an extension of her existence. She learned its secrets, read its codes, and unearthed cryptic messages painted on walls in the dead of night. The insurrection was no longer a distant rumor but an actual force, throbbing with an intensity that threatened to swallow everything in its path. As Haruka's inquiry developed, she found herself caught between her duty to the shogunate and her developing sympathy for the rebels' cause. She understood that the distinctions between good and wrong were not as clear-cut as she formerly imagined. In the end, she had to make a choice, one that would have far-reaching ramifications for herself and the city she had come to love. Chapter 2: The Alliance of Shadows. The moon hung low in the night sky as Haruka walked into the depths of Edo, following a twisting road that led to a hidden enclave. Whispers of the Dark Alliance had reached her ears, tales of their lethal skills and secretive operations. With the weight of the insurrection bearing upon her, she sought their cooperation in her quest for a peaceful conclusion. When she moved into the isolated courtyard, a calm fell over the air, and individuals emerged from the shadows, their features shrouded by black hoods. Haruka's heart quickened, her senses sensitive to the tension that flared about her. "I desire an audience with the Shadow Alliance," she declared with a forceful voice, her determination reverberating through the night. The figures exchanged looks, a quiet dialogue going between them. Finally, one of them went forward, his voice tinged with a cautious caution. "Express your objective, warrior," he urged, his eyes shining with an intensity that mirrored her own. Haruka took a step closer, her gaze meeting his. "I ask your cooperation in bringing a stop to the Crimson Blossom Uprising. I hope that through diplomacy and understanding, we can establish a resolution that prevents more violence." The air grew silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The Shadow Alliance was notorious for their brutality, their talents unparalleled in the art of quiet executions. They had chosen their career in shadows, staying away from the political environment. Haruka's request for diplomacy went against their very nature. Minutes passed like an eternity before the figure nodded, a gesture loaded with hesitant acceptance. "We will hear you, samurai. But know this, our allegiance rests with justice, and we will not hesitate to take down those who attempt to plunge the nation into chaos." Haruka's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and worry as she was brought deeper into the enclave. She entered a hall bathed in the warm glow of candlelight, its walls decorated with exquisite tapestries representing secret operations and tales of heroic resistance. Sitting at the head of a long table, a person wrapped in darkness awaited her. This was Hiroshi, the mysterious commander of the Shadow Alliance, his reputation whispered among the terrified and the desperate. "You desire our help, Haruka Nakamura." Hiroshi's voice conveyed an authority that compelled respect. "But tell me, why should we connect ourselves with a cause that veers from the shadows and into the world of diplomacy?" Haruka answered his eyes, her determination steadfast. "The Crimson Blossom insurrection threatens to rip our nation apart. If we can establish common ground, if we can bridge the rift between the shogunate and the rebels, we can save countless lives and usher in a new period of peace." A murmur went through the room as the members of the Shadow Alliance exchanged looks, their mistrust blending with a gleam of optimism. Hiroshi sat back in his chair, his gaze fixated upon Haruka. "You talk of a lofty goal, Haruka Nakamura," he continued, his voice filled with a combination of caution and respect. "If you honestly believe in the power of words over swords, then we shall listen." The night stretched on as Haruka recounted her encounters, her interactions with both loyalists and rebels, expressing her vision of a unified world where justice might win without sacrificing lives. The members of the Shadow Alliance listened closely, their harsh features melting, their hearts moved by her words. By the time the daylight dawned, a decision had been reached. The Shadow Alliance would lend its help, their abilities now devoted towards the quest of peace. Together, they would go on a dangerous journey, encountering innumerable hurdles and perils, but united in their commitment to bring forth a brighter future for their region. Haruka's words had kindled a flame of hope inside them, and they were ready to fight for her cause. Chapter 3: A Betrayal Unveiled. The air hung thick with anxiety as Haruka stood in the dimly lighted chamber, her heart thumping in her chest. The area was hung with beautiful tapestries representing conflicts and victories of the past, a continuous reminder of the stakes at hand. Shadows flickered on the walls, echoing the conflict within her. Her trusty companions, the ones she had fought beside and confided in, suddenly stood before her, their emotions a combination of remorse and anger. The weight of their betrayal rested upon her shoulders like a leaden mantle, threatening to crush her spirit. "Why?" Haruka's voice quivered with a mixture of incredulity and pain. "How could you betray me, betray everything we've battled for?" One of them, a long-time acquaintance, went forward, his eyes downcast. "Haruka, you must understand. The revolt offers change, a chance for the common people to rise above their conditions. We couldn't ignore the call any longer." Her hands tightened, a tempest of emotions boiling within her. "You selected this road without contemplating the ramifications, without recognizing the lives that would be lost. We fight for justice, not anarchy." Another companion, a comrade who had been at her side through innumerable fights, spoke forward. "Haruka, we believe in your cause, yet we perceive the weaknesses in the shogunate's authority. The Crimson Blossom gives a chance for a better future." A combination of fury and anguish welled up within Haruka as she gazed at them, once trusted confidants now separated from her. The revelation of their disappointment wounded her heart, threatening to break the links they had previously shared. "We were a family," she muttered, her voice scarcely audible. "But now, you have chosen a different road, one that leads to ruin and mayhem. I cannot accompany you along this dangerous road." With a sorrowful heart, Haruka turned and exited the chamber, her thoughts plagued with questions and worries. The world she had known had fallen around her, leaving behind a hole she could not ignore. Days passed into weeks as Haruka found herself in self-imposed seclusion, seeking consolation within nature's embrace. The mountains were her shelter, their towering peaks echoing the struggles she faced. She traveled in alone, considering the decisions that had taken her to this crossroad. In the solitude of the woodland, whispers of her ancestors reached her ears, their ethereal voices crying out to her. Haruka's heart quickened, for she knew that they carried the wisdom of centuries past. At a moment of despair coupled with optimism, she submitted herself to their instruction. Images of wars fought and lost flashed before her eyes. The weight of the past weighed down upon her, its load combining with her own. She seen the rise and fall of civilizations, the triumphs and tragedies engraved in the annals of history. Led by the ghosts of her ancestors, Haruka began on a journey to sacred locations, seeking answers to the questions that tormented her. She meditated in old shrines, her thoughts quieted by the muttered prayers of the devoted. In the silence, she discovered clarity. With fresh resolution, Haruka returned to the place she loved, her steps guided by the lessons of the past. She sought out allies, not with blind trust, but with a discerning eye. She forged new alliances, tested their loyalty, and re-evaluated her own convictions. As the rebellion raged on, Haruka stood at the precipice, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. She knew that the path to justice was fraught with treachery and sacrifice, but she also knew that she had the strength and determination to see it through. With her ancestors' spirits watching over her, Haruka would fight for a better future, one where all were treated with respect and dignity. And with each step she took, she knew that she was one step closer to achieving her goals. Chapter 4: Paths of the Past. The sun fell below the horizon, throwing a golden color across the land as Haruka stood before the ancestral shrine of the Nakamura clan. The air was thick with expectation as she braced herself for the spiritual adventure that lied ahead. She closed her eyes, inhaling in deeply, letting the weight of her ancestry to lay upon her shoulders. When her eyes opened, the shrine seemed to sparkle with an ethereal brilliance. Whispers resonated in the air, borne by the wind that rustled the leaves of ancient trees. Haruka walked forward, her footfall thoughtful, each one a tie to her ancestors. The shrine doors creaked open, exposing a hallowed room decorated with antiques and symbols of the Nakamura clan's past. Artwork representing conflicts and victories graced the walls, their brilliant hues a testimony to the tradition that had formed her. With reverence, Haruka approached a modest shrine at the center of the room. Old scrolls sat perfectly stacked, each bearing secrets and prophecies that had been passed down through centuries. She stretched out, her fingers quivering as they touched the ancient sheet. When she unfolded the scrolls, a burst of energy coursed through her veins. Visions flashed before her eyes, a tapestry of memories interlaced with glimpses of the future. She watched wars waged in distant nations, the clash of steel and the cry of soldiers. She saw faces both familiar and new, their futures entwined with her own. Inspired by these visions, Haruka proceeded on a journey, visiting to spiritual spots strewn across the nation. She sought out the knowledge of spiritual elders and listened to their experiences, each one adding a piece to the complicated puzzle she was fitting together. At the foot of a gorgeous waterfall, Haruka pondered, her mind purified of distractions. The gushing river produced a symphony of tranquility, engulfing her in a sense of tranquility. It was here, in this location of natural beauty, that the ghosts of her ancestors talked to her. Haruka, their voices muttered in unison, communicating a knowledge that transcended time. Embrace your history. Unravel the prophecies that have been entrusted to you. Under their help, she explored further into the secrets that surrounded the Crimson Blossom Revolt. The prophecies presented a rich tapestry of choices and consequences, of sacrifice and salvation. Haruka's connection to her ancestors became deeper, their presence a comfortable reassurance in the face of uncertainty. She traveled to forgotten temples and holy forests, seeking the spirit's wisdom. Through ceremonies and offerings, she created a relationship with her heritage, drawing into their power and knowledge. They conferred onto her the information needed to unify the split groups, to bring an end to the violence that scarred the nation. The journey ahead was difficult, the stakes enormous, but Haruka had become a conduit for the aspirations and dreams of generations past. She carried their legacy with conviction, aware that her actions would affect the path of history. As she returned to the ancestral shrine, her steps were filled with purpose. She had uncovered the roads of the past, and now, equipped with ancestral direction, she would proceed on the final part of her trip, ready to confront the trials that awaited her. With the wisdom of her ancestors as her guide, Haruka would utilize the information she had received to negotiate the subtleties of the uprising, to bring about a conclusion that would not only restore peace but also respect the history of the Nakamura clan. The weight of the forecasts hung upon her shoulders, yet she stood erect, ready to meet the fate that awaited her. Chapter 5: The Crimson Legacy. The old doors of the Nakamura family library creaked open as Haruka went inside, the air dense with the aroma of worn paper and the weight of forgotten wisdom. Dust particles swirled in the shafts of sunshine that filtered through the towering windows, throwing an ethereal glow on the rows of books and scrolls that lined the shelves. With reverence, Haruka brushed her fingertips over the spines of the volumes, feeling a link to the past as she sought answers to the riddle of the Crimson Blossom Revolt. The library held the key to uncovering the secrets of her clan's history, and she was determined to find the truth. She grabbed an old tome, its pages yellowed with age, and nestled into a soft armchair near the hearth. When she began to read, the words spoke to her, unraveling a narrative of intrigue and honor that spanned decades. The Nakamura clan, formerly renowned as protectors of justice and harmony, has endured its share of internal struggle. Long ago, a schism had emerged, separating the clan into groups that sought for supremacy. The seeds of strife had been sowed, and the results had resonated through the centuries. Haruka dug deeper into the annals of her ancestors, uncovering legends of a long-forgotten character known as the Crimson Defender. This famous warrior had emerged during a period of immense unrest, aiming to unify the various tribes and restore harmony to the land. The connections to the present were clear, and Haruka recognized that the Crimson Blossom may be the spiritual heir of this forgotten hero. With renewed purpose, Haruka sought guidance from the oldest members of the Nakamura clan, those who had watched the clan's plunge into turmoil firsthand. They related stories of togetherness, sacrifice, and redemption, their voices laced with sadness and desire for a bygone period of peace. As the days grew into weeks, Haruka's grasp of her clan's past strengthened. She unearthed the ancient rites and customs that had tied the Nakamura warriors together, their teachings emphasizing respect, loyalty, and the pursuit of justice. She trained tirelessly, perfecting her talents as a warrior, embracing the red strands of her lineage that raced through her blood. Among her studies, Haruka came onto a hidden cavern under the library. Lit by a wavering torchlight, the room revealed a rich trove of treasures and antiquities. She gazed at the elaborately wrought swords, the ceremonial armor, and the exquisite scrolls that represented wars waged and wins gained. One specific scroll attracted her eye. Unfurled, it showed a map, an ancient map that charted the location of a relic claimed to contain the secret to stopping the revolt. It was a symbol of the Nakamura clan's history, a talisman that might bridge the gap between the warring groups and pave the way for a new era of tranquility. Driven by this newfound knowledge, Haruka assembled a small group of loyal allies and embarked on a perilous journey to retrieve the artifact. They traveled dangerous mountains, negotiated impenetrable woods, and confronted fierce adversaries. Along the journey, they visited villages ripped apart by the fighting, their pain inspiring Haruka's strive to bring about peace and healing. Finally, after terrible challenges, Haruka and her friends found the mythical shrine where the relic was concealed. When she neared the hallowed pedestal, she stopped, feeling the weight of duty rest upon her shoulders. The relic pulsed with a faint, red glow, as though recognizing its true possessor. With a firm hand, Haruka reached out and gripped the relic, her heart bursting with hope and the belief that she could construct a route to peace. The history of the Nakamura clan would continue on through her, and she was determined to respect it by utilizing the relic to bring an end to the rebellion and usher in a new period of prosperity for everybody. When she turned to leave the shrine, she realized that her quest was far from finished, but with the item in her hands, she was certain that she could face whatever obstacles lie ahead. Chapter 6: Fury of the Blossom. The air crackled with anxiety as Haruka stood at the verge of fate, her pulse beating in her chest. The battlefield sprawled before her, a painting of chaos and resolve. The rebels, their red flags billowing in the breeze, stood firm, ready to battle for their cause. And at the forefront, the figure of the Crimson Blossom, their charismatic leader, radiated an air of unshakable resolve. Haruka's comrades, her devoted companions who had been by her side during this long voyage, formed a protective circle around her. Each face revealed the wounds of battles fought and sacrifices committed. They had become a family, linked by common purpose and the unrelenting desire to see their home free from the grips of war. The crash of steel and the shouts of warriors resonated through the field as the conflict begun. Haruka, her katana clasped securely in her hands, moved with a grace born of long hours of training. Her motions were swift, precise, a ballet of steel that defied the pandemonium surrounding her. In the middle of the struggle, Haruka's eyes focused onto the form of the Crimson Blossom. Their eyes locked, and for a brief instant, time appeared to stop still. There was familiarity in that glance, a mutual awareness of the weight of their separate loads. Haruka pondered whether, in another time and place, they could have been partners, fighting together for a worthy cause. Yet this was not a moment for alliances. This was a conflict that would define the destiny of the nation, a struggle that would decide the fate of countless people. The Crimson Blossom lifted their weapon, a sword wreathed in crimson flames, and came toward Haruka with a passion that mirrored their moniker. The collision of their swords sent sparks flying, the metallic symphony of clashes and parries filling the air. Each hit was a monument to their talent, their desire, and the opposing values that powered their war. The battlefield became a churning tornado of emotions, a conflict where honor and duty battled. Haruka's mind raced as the combat went on. The weight of the lives lost, the anguish suffered, pushed upon her. She questioned the route she had chosen, the sacrifices made, and the price she would pay for triumph. Yet her determination stayed solid, founded in a sense that justice and peace could be reached without additional violence. When the struggle reached its height, the warriors engaged in a last confrontation of wills. The Crimson Blossom, their face concealed under a crimson mask, murmured words that echoed through Haruka's spirit. Their voice communicated the agony of a shattered world, the longing for change, and the belief that they were fighting for a better future. In that moment, Haruka recognized the real face of the Crimson Blossom, not as an enemy, but as a mirror reflecting the fight within her own heart. They were both soldiers, motivated by their principles, seeking a route ahead in a world split asunder. Yet while they battled, Haruka realized that success did not always imply defeat for the Crimson Blossom. With a sudden flash of awareness, Haruka disengaged from the combat. She dropped her weapon, a symbol of her choice to break the cycle of violence. She moved aside, a gesture of calm despite the tumult, and extended a hand to the crimson flower, providing an opportunity for reconciliation. For a brief while, the battlefield went silent. All eyes were upon Haruka and the Crimson Blossom, their acts reverberating through the souls of those who had struggled for so long. And suddenly, with a glimmer of hesitation, the Crimson Blossom dropped their weapon, accepting Haruka's offer of peace. Together, they stood amidst the ruins of their conflict, two soldiers who had found common ground in their goal for a better world. As they walked away from the battlefield, hand in hand, Haruka knew that their struggle was far from done, but she also knew that they had taken the first step towards a brighter future. Thank you for joining us on this mesmerizing adventure through the Crimson Blossom Rebellion. We hope you found solace and tranquility in our sleep story. Don't forget to subscribe to Midnight Murmurs for more captivating tales that will transport you to dreamland. Hit that like button and share the magic of Midnight Murmurs with your friends. Until we meet again, may your dreams be filled with enchantment and peaceful whispers. Good night.